Welcome to the I Get Better podcast with your hosts, Charlene, Rene, and Phedra Smith, where we discuss topics related to life, love, mental, physical, and spiritual health, and how we can all get better together. Welcome to the I Get Better podcast. This is your host, Phedra Smith.
And I'm Charlene Rene. And today we're going to continue our I Get Better at Relationship series. And we're going to be talking about friends. How many of us have them?
Oh, that was wonderful.
Friendships, right? We're going to talk about the friendship relationships. Y'all like my singing? No.
That was wonderful.
I don't think so. Forgive me, my voice is a little hoarse. I'm getting over a little something. So that's what you get, my very white voice today. All right, so talking about friendships. These are another important relationship. Of course, we talked about family relationships last time. Now we're going to jump into another type of relationship, which are friendships.
Yeah, that's so what's the Merriam Webster definition?
Okay, the dictionary definition of the word friend is a person whom one knows and with whom one has a bond of mutual affection, typically exclusive of sexual or family relations, or a person who has a strong liking for and trust in another person, or a person who is not an enemy or foe.
So real friendships they don't include sexual contact or any of that stuff. It's interesting. That's another topic for another day.
Not those type of friends. We're not talking about those friends, okay? Not a booty call friend, okay?
So what is your definition? You know, I know we like to have the dictionary definition, but what is your personal definition of a friendship?
A friend is a person who you have a close relationship with, a bond, and you spend time with them, you get along with one another, you talk, you have a mutually beneficial, like you add value to one another, and you have some support from them. That's what I would consider a friend.
Right. I agree. I think my definition, it ranges and depends on the individual. So we have our own concept of what a real friendship consists of, depending on your experiences or your family of origin. But I believe that the definition is based on our family of origin and our individual needs and expectations of others. And so depending on what you define as a close friendship or not even but just a friendship in general, it really does depend on who you are and where you came from. So yeah, I think we can get into some friendship stuff and maybe some of the barriers to having a good friendship. Maybe that should be the first thing we talk about. What are some barriers that come with really having a healthy friendship? So,
well, I think if you don't have an adequate, healthy definition of what a friend is, then you will get into relationships and you will call people friends who do not have your best interests at heart, who aren't there to support you, who aren't dependable, who aren't loyal, who don't treat you good, who just take and don't give anything, and who may backstab you or, go around you and treat you wrong. And so if your definition is flawed, it may be that you do have friends according to your definition of what a friend is, but it may not be healthy if the definition isn't healthy.
Right. So I think that also sometimes depend on how healthy you are as a person.
Yeah, so if you're not healthy individually, right, then you will have difficulty maintaining healthy friendships.
Yeah, or defining what a healthy friendship should look like. So I think that's one of the barriers is you not being healthy as a person, and also what you mentioned, not having a good, healthy working definition of what friendship means or should look like.
And then also maybe you just don't know how to build friendship relationships, or you don't know how to be a friend to other people. And so now your relationships are suffering. So we'll talk more about that, how to build and maintain friendship relationships. But I do want to talk a little bit about what are some of the categories of friends. Because everybody I know has this, levels of friendship that are common, right? And the number one that I hear the most often is, well, they're not a friend, they're just an acquaintance. They don't want to loosely throw the word friend around, which I understand that. I agree. I don't think it should be handed out lightly like Halloween candy in anybody that comes along who blinks their eyes at you. So I think that is one category. So I have a few that I came up with. So the first would be an acquaintance. So this is someone who you just kind of know casually. Now, when you're I find it funny because when you describe these people to other people, typically you still say the word friend.
Yeah,
I know I do that, right? It's like you don't know how to say, well, I've heard it maybe on TV where people say, oh, an acquaintance of mine. But in typical everyday conversation, I'll say a lot of the time, oh, I have a friend that does this, or I have a friend. And then I know in my head they're not really my friend, but I just know them from somewhere. I met them.
But Charlene, would you introduce somebody and say, oh, this is my acquaintance, Phedra? Like, that's kind of like an insult, I feel like.
It is, but really it isn't. I think we should look up the definition of acquaintance and see what it says.
This is my acquaintance, but this is right here, this is my friend.
Right.
Really?
But essentially, we understand that an acquaintance is someone that you just really know on a surface level. They're not really that close to you to know them casually.
Yeah.
So you have acquaintances. And then another category that you may have are like your coworkers, which really you could say maybe acquaintances, but I kind of put them in their work friends, I would say. Yeah. And so you have your friends at work. And so you have those. And then when you get into like your deeper level relationships, you have like your childhood friends, like the people who you grew up with and you've known for a really long time. You may not be close to them, but they have like a different place in your heart, I think, than your friends that you gathered as you got into adulthood. Yeah. And then you have your really close friends, your BFFs. Right. These are like your ride or dies, the people who are the closest to you, closer than, or sometimes closer than a blood relative to you. Yeah. Yeah. And those are the creme de la creme, the cream of the crop relationships. And most people, those are the ones that they really are thinking of when they say they want friends. Yeah. They're not usually saying, I want to make more acquaintances, or I want more work buddies, or I want more, just casual people I know and see here and there. They really want a close, solid friend that they can talk to and hang out with and go do things together. Those are the friends that people are searching for.
Right. And essentially what they are looking for, as you said, is that connection. They want someone that they can have a deeper connection with.
And you know what? I found the dictionary definition of acquaintance. It says a person one knows slightly, but who is not a close friend. So it's exactly what we said. You slightly know them, but they're not a close friend. And so, it doesn't sound very appealing. But it's not bad. It's just like...
No, it's not bad. It just speaks to the level of the... And so what happens when people that don't have this definition worked out properly, what happens when they start having these expectations for acquaintances that they maybe should have for a closer friendship, like a BFF? I think that's where sometimes people have problems with making and maintaining relationships, is when they start putting pressure and expectations on people that, it's like, they're like, wait a minute, shorty, I don't know you like that.
Yeah, now they get disappointed. Now they get mad. Now they gonna cut you off when you really wasn't even that cool with them in the first place. Yeah, that's a form of delusion. Because you should know who's your friend and who's not.
I agree.
I don't know. I mean, I guess there are people who get confused about the nature of a relationship, but you may be putting yourself in the role and expecting that the other person is equally as invested in the relationship as you. So
Right.
maybe you are being a close friend to someone who is just an acquaintance, and you're expecting them to now be like you,
Right.
and
Right.
put that effort in. And so you may want them to be something that they are not, or that they never were, and they never will be.
That's so
And
sad.
now you're mad.
That's so sad.
It is, but it happens. You're right. And
agree.
so that can cause issues. But then you also have those people who are or were your BFFs and your friends, and you're expecting them to fill this role, and then they stop and they no longer can, and they don't. And now you got a problem with them because you may have been really, really close at some point, and we're going to talk more about that when the friendships end, and what do you do and how it affects you. And also, I want to talk more about why is it important for you to have friends? Because I've met some people who say they don't care to have any friends, and they really just want to be alone, and they don't want to make any friends. And I find it really odd when I hear that, when they just say, I don't like people, I don't need any friends.
Yeah, I think it's odd. I think that's odd also. And I wonder if that's a cover up or a defense mechanism, because possibly they are afraid to be hurt. They've had past situations where they've been disappointed. And so and it could come from their family of origin. You know, if I can't trust people in my family, how can I trust friendship? There's a whole lot of reasons why I think people develop this sense of distrust for other people.
Or they may be insecure. They may think that they're not worthy, or people aren't going to like them. So they rather just push them away before they can even get close to somebody, because they think they're going to be judged, or the person's not going to accept them. And so now it's just a protective thing, a defense mechanism, so that they don't get hurt, or they've been hurt in the past, like you said. But friendship relationships, I said that to say, friendship relationships are very important. They're even a matter of importance to your health, I believe. And I've also read an article that talks more about the actual health implications behind not having any friends, and the connection to
put that out there.
I will. I'm going to put a link for it in our notes, show notes, when we post this episode. But one of the things that I read, that found this connection between not having friends and loneliness, and the health implications come from the loneliness. And it's not the same as just saying I prefer to isolation and I just want to be by myself at home. That doesn't necessarily mean you're lonely. And so loneliness is something that is much deeper than just being by yourself. That feeling of loneliness, it leads to depression. It can lead to your hormone levels and your stress on your body. And an interesting thing that this article in particular was talking about is how it impacts a lot of elderly people as they get older, and how it contributes to them actually dying sooner when they don't have friends. And it's sad to think that you die of loneliness when there's billions of people in this world, and everywhere you go, you can't go anywhere unless you're in the middle of nowhere, or you go to the desert, or you go to the woods on purpose. That's the only way you can really get away from people.
But do you think a part of that is, number one, some people have problems making friends, but number two, people might have these issues that they haven't worked out as to why they keep themselves isolated. And and then you have people saying, like you said, I don't need friends, like, I'm good by myself. And then as you get older, you realize, oh, I do need friends.
Well, one of the things it says is, who's going to check on you? What if something happens to you? Say you fall. You're old, you fall down in your bathtub or whatever the case, and you break a hip. If you don't have any friends who check on you on a regular basis, you may just lay there for days and, at a time with no food and no help and no way to get to the phone and you can't crawl and then you die from something that could have been avoided because you didn't have any friends or family, for that matter, who can check on you, because sometimes your family can be your friends. But it's not something to take lightly, is having those friendship connections and those relationships and maintaining them and getting out of your head and saying, or getting that, what I think is a lie, out of your head and say you don't need anybody. Right. Everybody needs somebody, whether it's family or friends. And one thing I do want to make note of is I've heard this word being thrown around quite a bit, especially on social media, and I want to kind of bring some correction to it, is that a lot of people say that they're antisocial.
Yes, please correct that.
Stop it. So, antisocial, they have a false definition of what that means. And so people think that antisocial means that they just prefer to be by themselves and they just really don't like parties and they don't like social situations and they don't want to be invited to things. And they're like, leave me alone. I just want to stay home and watch Netflix or whatever the case. And that makes me antisocial. That is not antisocial. Antisocial is a mental disorder. It's a personality disorder. Antisocial personality disorder is not the same as saying you want to be alone and you like your own company. And so I really wish that people would stop saying that they're antisocial, because you know what? The people who say that are really lying, because this is how I'm going to prove my point on that. When you say you're antisocial, the only way I would believe that you really are antisocial is that when you are alone at your house, you aren't doing anything relatively social. For example, you are not on your phone scrolling on social media or Instagram, because what is that? Social media. You are still in contact and connection with people, even if you're home alone scrolling through your phone, texting, talking, or whatever. If you are watching movies or Netflix, guess what? You are maybe not communicating, but you are interacting with the people on the screen, because people are there with you, even if they're fantasy people. If you're reading a book, you're making some kind of connection to the characters in the book. That is a social interaction. So unless you're just sitting quietly in a room, looking at the walls and just thinking and being alone with your thoughts all of the time, I really wouldn't consider you to be an antisocial person.
Well, people need to look up what antisocial personality disorder is, because then they wouldn't define themselves as that also. It's not a good thing.
Right, because that's really like an antisocial person is purposely going out doing bad things, hurting people. They have no conscience. They are just terrible. Terrible people. Terrible. No morals, just bad. And so that's not you if you just don't want to go to somebody's party. Okay, or you just want to be home with a good book, or you just want to be home binge watching Game of Thrones. Like, that isn't antisocial, and so stop saying that. That's my little rant for the day on that. But friendships, let's get back to how we define our friendships, which we've already gone over how we define them, but also how we can get better at making friends and some of the barriers to forming friendships as an adult, because I see that often and I struggle with that. How do you make friends as an adult? It's so much easier when you're a child. Like, you just go, you start playing, you say, hey, you want to play? Hey, you want to play? Hey, let's go do this. And usually the answer is yes. Somebody wants to play. And so as an adult, it would probably be pretty strange if you walk up to people in the grocery store and say, hey, you want to play? They're going to look at you like you're crazy. But that is something that people struggle with, is forming and building new friendships. Because what you'll find is that even if you have a good group of friends or your BFFs or your circle, your tight-knit circle, life happens and people go through changes, and time and distance sometimes bring a wedge into those relationships. And so it sometimes becomes necessary to form new relationships, new friendships, just based out of life happening to you. I know that's happened to me because I've moved from one city to another, and I've had to now make new connections because all my friends, my close friends, live in another city from me, and I've struggled with that. How do I make friends in a new city where I don't know anybody? It's tough to do that.
So yeah, I agree with you. Making friendships as an adult takes a lot of work. It requires effort. It sometimes requires you to be involved in social organizations, and it also takes vulnerability. I think sometimes the older we get, the more butt hurt, so to speak, we've gotten over the years, and so sometimes, or just hurt, and it requires courage to put yourself out there again with friends because you have sometimes been burnt in the past, and so it can be incredibly difficult as you get older. Sometimes you get more jaded and you get less trusting of people because you've had conflict within your family or other friendships. So it not only requires work and effort, but it also sometimes requires you to be brave. And I know that sounds a little bit ridiculous, but it does.
Well, you don't want to be rejected, because if you try to open yourself up to make friends with somebody and they don't reciprocate, or they don't call you back or text you back, or they cancel plans when you try to make plans with them, then you kind of feel some kind of way. You feel a little rejection, and then you'll think maybe, well, what's the point? If I try to make friends, they're not gonna make effort. Everybody's so busy, which we are. People really are busy. I really see that because I'm busy.
Yeah.
And my extra time outside of work, business, kids,
I know.
Take the kids here, do this, do that, go grocery shopping, run errands, sleep. Where is the time for friendship? Where is the time to hang out with people? Because really, you just want to rest.
I think it requires being intentional. That's the bottom line. There are people in my life that I make an effort to talk to them because they are valuable to me, not but just because they're valuable, because they are part of my life. And so when I have events that happen in my life, they are people that I'm going to share these events with. That's how important they are. And then you have other relationships where you might not share everything with that person. It doesn't mean you're not as close, but it's a different type of friendship. So I think I want to talk about that a little bit, because I think that goes into also when we talk about expectations, depending on the level of your friendship. And also, I think depending on the past experiences of your friendship, like you mentioned earlier, when people start to change, but the other person, you're still expecting one thing, but then the other person changes based off of whatever has happened in their life, and there's no communication. And then one person has one expectation and another person has another. I think that creates some friendship conflict.
Right. And in some friendships, honestly, you may think that they're going to be lifelong, but they may just be for a season and a time. And it doesn't mean that you had to necessarily have some big falling out or argument or disagreement or fight. It's just things happen and you no longer can continue it in that because you've gotten busy or you've gotten new things going on in your life, and they also might have, and it just kind of run its course.
Right.
But what you'll still feel is the void once that happens, because you, at one point, this person did fill that void for you. So now you're having to deal with that impact of that relationship ending, even if it ended on a good note, so to speak. Right. But you weren't prepared for that, because once you, especially if they're a close friend, you don't really ever see the end of it. You never see that relationship ending while you're in it. You're like, this is my BFF, this is my girl, this is a person that we're always going to be friends, but that doesn't necessarily always happen that way. And so knowing what to do when the relationship ends is important, and then seeing the signs that it may end. If it's something you want to save, then you may need to start doing something about it before it gets to that point. Because some friendships don't have to end, but it's just they end because people are lazy. They don't want to put the effort in, and they don't, I don't want to say lazy. I guess that's a bit harsh, but they don't make it important. They don't make it an effort. They just, or they or they make a new friend, a shiny new friend, and that becomes important to them, and they may leave their old friend behind and not make it as important to them.
So I have a question. Shouldn't friendships be easy? And if not, why?
I don't know. I think that's a yes and a no to that. And I would say they shouldn't necessarily be easy because friends are human, and humans aren't easy. People aren't necessarily always easy.
I only want easy friendships.
But I want to say the ultimate entire lifetime of the friendship should not be difficult in the grand scheme of things. I think if a relationship is always hard, then that is an issue. That doesn't mean that there won't be hard times here and there, but ultimately I don't think a friendship should be forced or something that takes a whole lot of work to keep. Work in the sense of I gotta keep repairing this, so we gotta keep apologizing, or we gotta keep clearing up misunderstandings all the time, or somebody's feelings are always hurt, or somebody's really sensitive.
So at some point it becomes also a compatibility issue with friendships, is what you're saying. Because I think if you're compatible, it shouldn't really be difficult to maintain the relationship, because that's what makes you friends. It's because you have those commonalities and you have things that you find you have in common. Typically, that's what the friendship is originally based on. It's the fact that you have things in common and you're compatible. You like the same music, or you like the same sport, or whatever the case, that whatever might have drawn you together in the first place. You like to shop at the same store, you like the same movies. Anything can draw you together, and make you build that friendship, and that anything you have in common really isn't difficult. Right. I agree with that. I think just like family, it becomes like familiar, and sometimes with that familiarity, I think that sometimes it comes along with people have a lack of boundaries and a lack of respect for one another. So yes, we could get along very well, but if we don't respect one another and know that we have limits and we should have boundaries, then I do think that where at first maybe we had this bond and connection, it can cause problems if you don't recognize that, hey, I can't talk to my friend this way, or I can't do, I have to have boundaries and respect along with my love and fun and affection. I think that's where a lot of issues can come up.
That's a really good point that you said about respect, because a friend should respect you and not do things that are disrespectful. For example, they shouldn't say they're going to do something and not do it. Or they shouldn't play with your time, loosely with your time. Like if they say they're going to be somewhere, meet you at a certain place at a certain time, they shouldn't just make you wait for 30, 45 minutes to an hour for them to show up and be where they said they're going to be. And then also, another thing I wanted to say is they shouldn't take advantage of you because you're friends. Because they may think, well, that's my friend, I can treat them lesser than because I know they're going to be there. And that's not right, because I had friends like that. Like, you just really couldn't depend on this person to do what they said they were going to do. Like, if they said, I'm coming over, it would maybe be 2 or 3 hours late. And it came to be to the point where I would just say, that's just who they are. I know if they say they're going to do this, that is never going to be on time. They're just not going to be on time. They're just not going to do what they said they're going to do. And I had to now put them in a different category at that point. I had to now say, this person isn't a friend who's going to be respectful of my time. And that doesn't mean I cut off the relationship, but I now have to adjust my expectations for that person and not allow them to take advantage of me. So now I may not invite you to anything that I know that I need you to be on time for at that point. And so it is important that you don't allow your friends to become so familiar that you just treat them any kind of way and don't have respect for their feelings, or you just say anything to them because you think, you want to be honest. Don't be hurtful.
Yeah, and I also think when you bring that, I think that's a good point where you have to adjust. Sometimes you adjust your expectation, and therefore, when I adjust my expectations of you, you might slide down the range of friends. That the spectrum might be, you might be on another you might be on the far end of the left.
You move to the acquaintance spot.
You move into the acquaintance because because there's a part of that when you're drawing boundaries. It's people don't understand boundaries are not there to hurt the other person. They're there to protect and to help you as a person. So if
you're not on your job, you're gonna get demoted. You're gonna get replaced. If you're not doing what you're supposed to do as a friend, you have to expect that you got to bring something to the table. You can't just say, I'm your friend in word and not in action. That's not a friend at all.
Well, you also have these friends that they're friends of grandeur. They like to do big things, but when it comes to the everyday things that I think really speak to a true friendship or a certain level of a friendship, it's different. So I think adjusting your expectations, but also having that relationship with that person where y'all kind of know where y'all stand. I think that's important also.
Well, that might be a new category of friend. That's like, Santa Claus friend.
I like it.
It come one day a year for Christmas. They bring all kind of gifts. Or they down for a big party, or they down for a big trip, or something like that, and they'll come through on something like that. But like you said, the little everyday stuff, just calling to check on you, see how you are, how you doing, can I bring you something, can I pray for you, something like that, they may be no good for that. And so at that point, like you said, you just keep them in their category, you keep them in their lane. This is my Santa Claus friend. I don't have no friends like that just, Santa Claus me. So maybe need to create a spot on my roster for the Santa Claus friend, because that would be nice to have somebody come through and do something big for me. That would be pleasant, I think, to experience that. So just being able to put people in their proper categories and adjusting your expectations of them, and understanding that seasons come and go and people do change and life does happen and their roles may change in time. They may start as an acquaintance, move up the ranks to become close friends, and then they may move back down to acquaintance again. And eventually they may just fall off the roster entirely and just become someone you used to know or you used to be friends with. And that's okay too.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the endings of friendships, because I think that people don't really expect for friendships to end, like especially when you have to be intentional about ending a friendship. It's one thing for y'all to just, we just lost touch, but it's another thing for you to have to say about that, like
just sit down and break up with them.
I ain't gonna be able to do it no more. Like you're killing me, son.
I have no experience in breaking up with a friend. Honestly, I can't even give any advice on that, because I've never had to sit down with somebody and say, look, we just can't be friends anymore. It's just always naturally fizzled out. Like, we just stop talking. We don't call so much. It just really just ends naturally. So that has been helpful, that I haven't had to go through that.
That is a blessing.
That friend breakup. But if you have, I would love to hear more about that and how that works.
I think that I have had a particular friendship where when I tried to have boundaries with that person, it became a problem. And when I talked about expectations and what I look for in a friendship, and that person wasn't able to do it, I had expectations based off of our past, and she had expectations. I don't know what her expectations were based off, because we had been friends for so long. I would assume that we had the same sort of relationship, and things changed. I think one of the things that we have to recognize is there is a grieving process that you might go through. That person might be that person that you called every time something exciting happened, or something big happened in your life, and now you can't have that relationship with that person. And so there is a grieving process that you go through. And a lot of times, especially when you might have toxic relationships, just because that relationship wasn't healthy, it doesn't mean that you don't miss that person. And so I believe that one of the things people don't realize is that there are moments and times where you do have to end relationships for one reason or another. Maybe because that person doesn't respect your boundaries, or they don't respect you as a person, or your expectations for them aren't being met, or theirs for you aren't being met. So, I think just to go along with that, although most people don't ordinarily have relationships like that. Sometimes they stop abruptly and you don't realize that, hey, things are changing. And then sometimes things have to be intentionally. And I think a lot of times we aren't intentional with ending things that are toxic for whatever reason. And so there might be times in our life as we become healthier as individuals that we have to evaluate our relationships with people and say, hey, this might not be the best thing for me. And depending on your level of relationship, it might require a talk. There might be a talk that you can have to maybe improve the relationship, but then there might be a talk you have to say, hey, this isn't working for me. And then some people, you might not care that much. And so you just let it fizzle out. You just don't call or you don't respond back to them.
Right.
You know?
Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So now let's go ahead and get into on a more positive note, not breaking up a friendship, but actually how you can get better at forming new relationships and building new friendships. And so I have a list of 10 things that you can do to make new friends as an adult. And I'm going to also post a link for this if you want to read the full article on where I got these 10 steps from. So first step, number one, is to realize that your fear or your hesitation is in your head. It's not that you're going to be rejected or people won't like you and you should be afraid of reaching out and meeting new people, but you need to develop a strong sense of self-esteem and a healthy image of yourself and think positively and think, I'm a likable person and people are going to like me. Number two, you may want to start small and just reach out to people who you already know, who you may not know very well, but that you can maybe get their phone number, give them your phone number, or set up a time to have lunch or coffee with them. Number three, you have to make an effort to get yourself out there. You have to leave your house typically to find new friends. So make it a point to get outside of your house and put yourself out there and make yourself available to meet people. Number four would be to just take the first step. Don't think that you have to wait on people to come to you, but you may need to make the first move and say, hey, I really like that. Where'd you get that? And just kind of start a conversation with people who you're meeting when you're out and about. Number five, be open. Don't be so narrow in your view of who you think would make a good friend. You can't always tell from looking at someone if they're going to be a good person, not just by what the clothes they have on or how they talk or something on the outward appearance. But you don't know, until you get to know someone. So be open and don't just put yourself in a box and say, I only can be friends with people who wear these types of clothes or have their hair like this or whatever narrow definition you may have of people who are friendship worthy. Number six, get to know a person, find out who they are. That goes more of getting to the deeper root of who they are as a person and not just let it be all about you. Number seven, you want to be genuine. Be a genuine person. Don't be fake about it. People really don't respond well to fakeness. So number eight, be yourself. Do not try to be like anyone else. Don't think that you have to be a certain way to attract the attention of other people to get them to like you. Number nine, be there for them. So that goes back to the not just be about what you can get, but also look to what you can give and be a dependable person that people can rely on. And the final step or tip is to make the effort to stay in touch with people. Again, we talked about how sometimes life just comes and you get busy and you don't always make room for those relationships. And I understand because I work a lot and I'm tired and I like to just kind of be home and chill and relax. But it really does take some effort on your part to stay in touch with those people who you want to build a new friendship with and who you may want to maintain a relationship with if they're already your friends. So those are some things that you can do to get better at friendship and building and maintaining friendship relationships. I think that we've gotten a good start on what it means to be a friend, what your definitions are of friendship, maybe where your expectations need to be adjusted as time goes on. So I really want us to work on getting better at those friendship relationships because they are important and they are good for your health, especially your mental health.
Yeah, I think that was a good ending. So thank you guys for joining us. Remember to like, share, comment, and reach out to us. Have there been situations where you've had to end toxic relationships or put boundaries up and what that was like for you? We'd love to hear from you guys.
So let's keep getting better in order to do better, in order to be better.
Yes.